Hello, and welcome to, a little late, but better late than never, the best books I have read so far this year. A smorgasbord of delights, a time to reflect. 9 books in front of me. I dare say we should get into talking about them. Let me know what your favourite books of the year so far are. I have two 2025 releases, so two of the books I've checked out this year have been fantastic. One 5 star, one 4.75 star because I'm a pedantic little bitch. But yeah, let me know if any 2025s have been successful for you. Whether you've read any of these because I've gushed about them, whether I need to read any of yours because you love them. And yeah, what's your feeling of the year so far? It's flown by, that goes without saying. Remember when January felt like the longest month that's ever existed? And now it's July. Unbelievable. I am going in chronological order. There is no ordering to this. It's just from the oldest book that I read, starting in January. Actually, the first book on my list is from February, and going up until the end of June. This also includes only one entry per series, so even if I read a couple of things from a series and loved both of them, this is just one book from the series. The cat is having a good sleep, hopefully, and we will begin where all things should begin, at the end. I read The Crippled God by Stephen Erikson, completing the main 10 books of Malazan Book of the Fallen. I think you can see by the special editions behind me here that Grace and I, she has currently just finished Toll the Hounds, we both loved this series. I absolutely adore it. Maisie also loves it, wants to rub her hair all over it. Just a phenomenal series. As you may have seen in my best fantasy of all time, my favourite fantasy series, this series was number one. It usurped Realm of the Elflings. The just brazen audacity to put this much stuff into a series, so all over the place in terms of where you are, what time period you're in. It feels completely foreign, completely fantastical. I truly feel like it dropped out of a different universe and I am reading about a different culture's literature. It's just so otherworldly. I cannot give a better recommendation than that. And The Crippled God, it subverted what I was expecting. It delivered moments that made me cry. It was everything I wanted it to be without being everything that I expected it to be, which I think are two very different things and two important things to nail. The characters of Malazan are second to none in terms of the breadth of the cast and the depth of which we delve into them. This had moments that made me think, I cannot believe I actually read this in a book. Like, there are things that happen that I'm like, how did this even occur to someone to imagine up? The thematics that spanned the entire 10-book series were hammered home in this last book. Completely, I loved that the ending of this series is an ending for the themes as well. Like, there are each book has them nailed on, but there are series spanning themes that just completely hit you in the heart. And the thing that I love about Malazan so much, I think there's this whole argument around, firstly, genre is irrelevant. I think we all can admit that it's essentially marketing used to kind of pin people in. But in terms of the argument of a grim dark and then also the existence of grim heart or whatever the fuck people are calling it, I think all elements of grim dark, if you're going to put something in it, should have an element of heart to it as well. I think the distinction is that basically you can put it down to grim heart is something that is really phenomenal because it doesn't have to, you can use absolute darkness, the most horrid things that humans can do to each other, terrible events, and channel it towards something that is universal and human. And Malazan does that in a way that is truly spellbinding. The writing is phenomenal. The humor is there as always. The other thing with Malazan is that they're never perfect. There's the things about each and every single one of them that I have little nitpicks about, or bigger nitpicks. And for a series like this, that works in its favour because it's almost reinforcing the point of the series. And I just think that it is a one-of-a-kind, truly special fantasy series that is not for everyone, but if you click with it, if you are that type of fantasy reader, then it will change your perspective on what fantasy can be. There's a reason that it was my favourite fantasy series of all time. You may be listening to this thinking, this is hyperbole. There's a reason I think this is the best series of all time. So, I also just finished playing bass, and I think Maisie is licking my fingers to taste the metal, which is lovely. The second book is the second book in a trilogy, one that there is a review on the channel for that is spoiler and non-spoiler. And it was chosen by the Patreons, and that is The Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty. If you want to get involved in the Discord, links in the description as always. But I loved this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. It's my favourite of that trilogy. And I was looking to try out new trilogies, something that would really grab me. And the second book in this series opened up the world in which this story takes place in. An alternate timeline of begins in Egypt in book one, and we go to the city of Daevabad. The politicking, the world building, the schisms between cultures, all the character work, everything is delved into and explored in a deeper and in a deeper sense that also allows room. The best thing about this book is that it left room for the audience to be a part of it, in the sense that if you are paying attention to the characters, the cultures, everything involved, it does not spell things out for you. You can ascertain, and like, you are part of it. You are being like, okay, this doesn't quite make sense. This doesn't make sense. There is unreliable narratorship by virtue of prejudice or inaccuracy of information, that if you're paying attention, you can pick up on all of it and reach the ending you're going to reach before you get there. And I thought there was just a level of, firstly, confidence in the writing. To be able to craft something like that is incredibly audacious and also talented. I don't know if I just described the talent, and I just called it talented talent. But the second thing is that also confidence in the audience, that they are intelligent enough to pick up on those things, something that is increasingly lacking in some fantasy. And I don't know if I have a thirdly, but triplets are always good. You should always work in triples, so I'll think of something. Fuck it. Two will do. Those two things really made this book special. Third is The Exorcist by William Peter Blattey. I was utterly taken away by this book. It was an absolute page turner of a horror thriller. So it came out a few years before Carrie, before Stephen King got going, and I think they both have this rhythm to their writing. There's a real craft to the sentence length, the impact of their sentences, the way that they break up paragraphs. They have a real rhythm to their writing, that they create a sense of tension inside of you. I think that is both of one of their biggest talents. The other is their character work. William Peter Blattey, this is the story of Regan, a young girl who is possessed by a demon, and you are following their mother, who is just completely lost in what to do. The book begins where you experience the relationship of mother-daughter. You experience what Regan was like before she is possessed. You experience their loving relationship, the care that they have for each other. You experience the life that they're living, as the mother is an actress, quite a famous actress, and she's working on sets. The daughter's travelling with her. They've just come to this new place, and Regan is playing with a Ouija board, and it results in her being possessed. You follow as this mother has no idea on what to do. She is going through all the means that you would do as a parent. You're going to the doctor, you're doing medication, you're watching all of the avenues that we're taught to rely on through science and medicine fail, and you're watching her lose all hope and have no idea on what to do, until she essentially goes to the church as a last gasp effort. She does not believe, but she is witnessing something that she has no other explanation for, and no one else has any explanation for. And so she has to rely on the church. And I think that for a lot of people, that is inherently, firstly, terrifying, and secondly, relatable. The idea of, from the position of someone who does not believe in the Christian God, to be someone who is witnessing something completely otherworldly, no explanation, and the fear and terror of all of the rational minds telling you that they have no idea what's going on, and to the point that you come to believe via evil rather than good is such a sad and tragic and haunting perspective. Alongside that, you've got like a priest who is incredibly funny, has social commentary around queerness. You have the detective who is a absolutely phenomenal character. When he's introduced, he is bumbling, and he essentially pretends to be dumber than he is to ask multiple questions and draw information out of people. And the priest and him have such a great relationship. The character work is phenomenal. And I just found myself flipping through every single page. I understand why it's a classic. I think it is one of the best horror books I've ever read. And I 100% recommend it to everyone, even if you're not a horror fan, because I think there is just a relatability, and it's more of a drama. This woman suffering with an ill child rather than a horror book that it does then become. There are scenes of vulgarity and horror as this demon is torturing the mother, in terms of like emotional torture by making her daughter speak and swear in the using crude and horrid language, doing horrible things with their bodies, self-abuse. There are parts where it is fornicating, in terms of like it is the complete destruction of innocence that she represents in emotional torture of the people that love her. And as a result, it's a very uncomfortable read, but I think William Peter Blatty did it in a way that it's not a spectacle. It's not something, it's never gratuitous in my opinion. I think it is just horribly realistic in terms of its depravity. The Exorcist is fantastic. God bless it. Next up, Audition by Katie Kitamura, one of the 2025 releases. I got an ARC for this. I had no idea what it was about. I just saw a description of it and I saw someone review it, and I was like, you know what? Let's do it. I'm going to request it. It's super short, only like 100 pages long or something, 200 pages. And I personally loved this book. This book has like a 3.3 on Goodreads. So when I said in my original review that this is a pretentious book that I do not think most people will like, it seems like I was correct. But that does not change the fact that I absolutely adored it. This follows this actress who is, the backdrop is that she is evidently doing auditions and practicing for a play, but the foreground of the piece is that it opens with her at a restaurant with a younger man. She's probably in her 40s, 50s. This is a guy in his 20s, and she is watching other people and being like, they think I'm here on a date with this guy. They think I'm taking advantage of this guy. They think that I am doing all this stuff, and it's all, you are watching the perception. Everything is filtered through the perception of our main character. They are very unreliable. Their experiences and their memories and their trauma are all informing what is happening here. And Katie Kitamura very clearly draws from the structuring, the playing with the format of plays themselves, where essentially you're following a relationship in the first half of this woman and her husband and this younger man, the play that they're all practicing for and everything, and then there's a big twist in the middle. Nothing actually happens. Essentially, there is a break, and then the second half picks up, but the relationships have shifted and everything is as if nothing has changed and it's always been like this. And the entire book is to do with trauma, the time delay of it, the idea of feeling like you're over trauma and how something can trigger and switch you back into it. It's very vague but very precise. The writing is incredibly precise around a vagity of the narrative taking place. I think it's one of the most brilliant books I've read for experimentation, for prose. I think it's just so regimented and sharp, but so and every word, there's no spare word. It is all towards creating the relationships of these characters, letting you know who they are and feel them. So when that change happens, you are bamboozled and you have to work to get something from it, to come to an understanding. And my reading of it is that it is a book on grief. Because no one's going to read it, because it's got a 3.3, I'm going to spoiler it quickly. So warnings for spoilers, to give my reading, because no one else has read this book that I know, and I just want to speak about what I thought on it. So bear with me. Audition, yeah, the idea is that this younger man believes that she is his mother. He reads an interview where it is insinuated that she gave away a child. And he's like, I think I am that child. And she's like, there is absolutely no way, because that was bullshit. That review was bullshit. That interview was bullshit. They cut around it because of their angle. They did not want to have a pro-abortion article. So they cut around it to make it look like I gave away a child rather than I had an abortion. And so that is a revelation that then leads to the middle point where you break and then it comes back for the second act where now he is their child. They are all living together and there is a friction and a breakdown in relationship between her and her husband because of this gap, this presence of this son that they aren't quite sure how they act around, that's there, and everything has shifted, everything's slightly different, and it's this growing presence, this overwhelming shadow that is going over their life and changing everything. And when I was reading it, I got the feeling that the idea is that a shift has happened and that she thought she was done with the trauma of having an abortion, of making that choice, of having the societal judgment and pressure, the relationship dynamic between her and her husband that was still having issues that were unresolved and unspoken about. And that the presence of this guy who says that he thinks he's her daughter completely shifts, and it is this feeling of the past rising up, undealt with trauma, undealt with emotions, undealt with history, that grows and grows and takes a hold in that second part and grows and overshadows their life, overshadows their relationship. And I just thought that it was such a brilliant execution of the concept of unresolved grief and unresolved trauma, that never spelt it out. I just thought it was phenomenal. And I know evidently people did not get that from it like I did. I'm happy I read it. I'm happy I got it because I gave it 5 stars. I think it's brilliant. And sometimes it's nice to read a book that evidently a lot of people do not agree with you on, and you're just like, that's okay. I loved it. Next, A Song for Arbonne by Guy Gavriel Kay. I am now a Guy Gavriel Kay stan. This is at the time it was my second. I've now read 3 Guy Gavriel Kay books. A Song for Arbonne is a masterpiece as well. I gave this 5 stars. How to even go through it. The book essentially opens, it works the same way as a different book I read, which I'll get to in a bit, where the opening prologue of this book has an event that occurs that colours everything that happens later on. It is integral to the emotions, the mindset, the positions of all of the characters, their knowledge of it and their lack of knowledge of it. It is one of the best introductions to a fantasy world because it gives you that bit of knowledge to hold on to. And so while you're trying to figure out the world building and understand the relationships and everything, there is this backdrop of the characters that you're following not knowing that piece of information. And so you feel like you know more than the characters while you're also learning about the world and getting everything in your head. And so it just provides this give and take that I thought was just wonderful. Guy Gavriel Kay is an astonishingly good writer. His prose is just delectable. He has this evocativeness in his writing that makes you feel like it brings a certain era to mind in my mind. Like it's very historical fiction style writing, evocative, written with a sense of chivalry, of respect. That this is a prime example of the kind of dialogue that I miss, where it was written as if it was very kind of 19th, early 20th century vocabulary and expressions. It felt like it was emulating an earlier time. Like, obviously, it's not emulating the era in which it's writing about, because that was a completely different language. They're speaking a completely different language of that era. And so it uses an older dialect than the time in which the book's written to create that sensation. Nevertheless, it's just a style that I love. He writes about music and poetry and love, friendship, just everything in such gorgeous ways, such evocative ways, that I truly just love Guy Gavriel Kay's writing. And he does them in standalones. They're just, the fact that he's able to create such a masterpiece in one book is a testament to his level of writing. As with almost all of Guy Gavriel Kay's works, he is drawing from a real historical era and time and event to provide a backdrop where he's basically just renaming things. But it all leads to an event that actually occurred. It's so good. I'm very much looking forward to reading more of Guy Gavriel Kay, as always. Then, a book that was on my long, like, big books that I'm too scared to read, but that kind of thing. The book that won was East of Eden, and when it was a vote and everything. And it worked out because I loved it, evidently. I gave it 4.5 stars. This has some of the best emotive writing I've ever read. Especially, I can understand why a teenage boy reads this book, and it fundamentally shifts and changes their perspective on life and who they are. Because there are relationships in this book, and the concept of fatherhood and being a son and not growing up to be your father, and you have a destiny of your own. It's such a book for that era, like late teens, early 20s, when you are kind of, you're so ready to expand, but you feel that you're still confined by the place you grew up in or something, or the people you grew up around. And it just has messages for those people to allow themselves to grow and learn and love and take the goodness from everyone, to make mistakes and come and rise above them, to be a better person, essentially. And yeah, I think that John Steinbeck, there are elements inside the book that are just fantastic. And I read this whole thing, so there's a very, very integral line. And I read a review where someone said that they hated the book because the translation it uses is inaccurate. If you've read the book, you know what quote I'm referring to. It is it's the through line of the book is this concept. And this person was not happy because they were like, this is an inaccurate thing, it devalues it. It increases it to me, because it's the idea that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if what you're told is incorrect, or like, it is about what you take from it. You can have inaccuracies, you can be imperfect, and you can still work and use lessons and take what you need from them to be a better person. And that holds with the inaccuracy of the translation. I think that that is only a benefit to the novel in hindsight. I think it reinforces the themes. And so I just thought it was a very interesting review to be like, one translation and you missed everything in the hundreds of pages that you read. You didn't take anything else from it. Like, you didn't think anything other than the fact that that one mistranslation ruined the book. I don't know. I just thought it was dumbfounding. One of the great American novels, as a result, there will be things inside of it that are uncomfortable to read. It's kind of like when you read old British novels and you have empire represented and that kind of thing. This book will have elements of treatment of indigenous people, and that has an effect on the novel. And also race and bigotry is important in this book. I think that Steinbeck does a fantastic job of expressing the fear of other and how people misrepresent or misunderstand each other, how conversing and loving is important to understanding other people, about assimilation and keeping your own identity, about how both things are necessary. I just thought it was a fantastic book that was, I can understand why young Americans were so deeply and are still so deeply affected by it. Next up is another Discord buddy read that also is a different buddy read that I'm doing with a group of people, and that was Northern Lights by Philip Pullman, a book I absolutely adored. This is another one I have a full review up on the channel. Such a good book. I am not one to give great reviews to first books in series. It's a weakness of mine. One, that the next 3 books we're going to read are all first books in series that I loved, so we're breaking the curse. But up until Northern Lights, it had been something I struggled with. Northern Lights was a straight 5 out of 5. I loved the writing. Once again, Philip Pullman is writing in that tone. He's using academic verbiage for a lot of it. He is a very clever writer that is not treating the audience like an idiot. I love Lyra. I love the characters that we meet of this young girl who is orphaned and left at a college in Oxford, and she becomes involved in this mystery around missing children, and her demon, which is like an animal familiar that everyone has, go and become involved in all kinds of things. There are great twists, great reveals throughout that really draw you in. The world building is massive and spanning, and also deeply socially commenting on church and state, on animal cruelty, on all of these things, on the treatment of Romani and Irish travellers, and all of these things that at the time in the 90s as being written were so prevalent. And I think he just does a great job, and it pulls me back to my childhood and the things that were on the social consciousness at the time. Loved it. Absolutely adored it. I think Philip Pullman's fantastic. I loved it. I hope the rest of the series continues well, because I have seen people say they only get better, and I've seen people say that they get absolutely fucking shit. I've seen someone rate book 1 and 2 5 stars, and the third book 2 stars. I have seen all different reactions to the series, which personally fills me with nothing but giddy excitement. If you want to get involved in the buddy read for this one, we will be continuing it in August, actually next month. So if you wanted to read the first book or just catch up whenever, it's going to be there. We're reading 1 1/4, so we'll be finishing the series later this year. Yeah. Then, a book that I have not had too much of an opportunity to gush about yet, I read The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. This was a book that I saw Esme review, and I was just kind of like, you know what, I'm going in. I had no expectations. It was not a book that I had seen previously. I just read her review, and it was like, I was like, this sounds up my alley. Epic fantasy, witty writing that still takes itself seriously, massive political intrigue, the right amount of romance for me. It had everything. And yeah, I think that it played so well because it has. Firstly, this is the book that I was referring to with Song for Arbonne, where it had a first chapter that colours everything that comes after it. I'm not going to spoil anything about the book. I think you should just go into it with this one. But yes, with the book, it's essentially where you end up following. There's every 24 years, the emperor of this place steps down, and there is a competition with a representative from different different houses, like a boar, a bear, that kind of thing, and a fox, that kind of vibe. Raven, evidently the Raven Scholar. And there is a murder of one of these people before the games take place, and our main character Nima Craw has to solve that murder. And yeah, it gets into all this political intrigue, all of this unraveling of a mystery. It is, in my mind, the best fantasy mystery since Who Killed John Aaron in book 1 of A Song of Ice and Fire. I think it is that good. It is just under, in my opinion, the quality of mystery as A Song of Ice and Fire in A Game of Thrones. And that is, to me, one of the greatest pieces of intrigue in all of fantasy literature. I love A Game of Thrones. And this is the closest I felt to that overwhelming need to just keep flipping pages and keep reading to find out what's happening, and having enough little nuggets and enough little bits chucked at you here and there to slowly put together this image and put together the history that has led to this. I think it is just a great book. The writing is very different, obviously. It is the system of the events and everything feels very Hunger Games, very that era of YA in a sense of the trials, but the actual quality of prose is fantastic. It has a lot of experimentation. You're switching between third and second person. You get a lot of interesting world building via that. And yeah, I just think it was fantastic. It's one that lived up to the hype for me. A lot of people, we kind of started a spontaneous buddy read because I forced Grace to read it afterwards, and then other people were reading it, and everyone seemed to love it. There was one person who did bounce off it. I will specify that. I think that unfortunately it's probably reached a point where it could be overhyped for people now, and that's always dangerous and always inevitable. But I had a great time with it, just coming in pretty much blind, and had a whale of a time. And finally, a book that is also a Discord darling is These Burning Stars by Bethany Jacobs, a book I just spoke about in my June wrap-up. It is the latest and the last book on this list, and a fantastic sci-fi where you're following the kind of from grey to horrid is kind of the vibe of characters you're following. Ezek Nightblood is one of the main characters, and you are just obsessed with how rotten she's going to be to people next. She's such an asshole, and I loved it. I think the writing was fantastic. It was very tight, but you wanted to flip pages. Once again, this is an absolute page turner with a great mystery. Another book that has a history behind it that you are unraveling as it goes along. I personally think that those are some of the strongest fantasy books you can have. When you start a first book and you get a sense that there is a depth to this world that we are going to plummet into and delve into and expand on, and it's like that's the feeling you usually get from a book 2. Once you've got everything in line, book 2 you can blow it up and go wild. When a first book is able to give you that sense of mining for information and discovering a history, that is my bread and butter. They are my favourites, and there's been a lot of them that I've read this year that have had that feeling. These Burning Stars, great sci-fi, Fantastic social commentary that I really enjoyed around working class and exploitation. Nice and short as well. I think like 450 pages, which is a nice length for a sci-fi fantasy book. Yeah, I think that's it. I'm getting tired of speaking. I'm sure you're getting tired of listening to me. So I'm going to line these up. I hope you did enjoy. I hope you've found some books that you can be excited for, because I think they are all worth being excited for. If you did enjoy, please do like, please do subscribe. Yeah, let me know if you've read any of these, what you thought of them. I feel like I've got an okay kind of span here. Unfortunately, like most are fantasy, then you've got a sci-fi, horror, and a classic, and a literary fiction. Otherwise, it's fantasy. I think I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 fantasy. So that makes sense, and I'm glad, because why not? Why don't you want more? Yeah, here we go. Here's my stack. Have a nice rest of your day.